All right. We're live. I look like I feel. Okay. So here's what happened. I was on Twitter this afternoon. I was minding my own fucking business. I was ready to tweet a joke about 64-bit video games and then get involved with stupid fights over ridiculous crap. But no, the universe had other plans. Because I was on Twitter on the computer, which meant that hovering off on my right-hand side was the trending tab. And 3 lines down was a phrase that was trending. And that phrase was what you see in the title. There were mass hysterectomies. And I knew. Bone fucking deep. I knew. I hoped I was wrong. I came very, very close to praying that I was wrong. I was, come to find out, not wrong. According to reports from a whistleblower, at the concentration camp on the southern border, most historically beset with complaints of medical malpractice, we've got something worse. According to reports of a whistleblower, and allegedly, there is a strange, sustained campaign of forced sterilization. Apparently, largely under the hands of a single medical professional, a doctor who is as yet unnamed. If this turns out to be true, and if he is ever named, then my hashtag that I came up with out of thin fucking air in blind raging fury an hour or so ago, hashtag get his ass to the Hague, will stand. I know Trump pulled us out of the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court relatively recently, and it's becoming increasingly obvious why. And I know that the concentration camps track back to the walking pustule Stephen Miller. And I don't care. If you commit atrocities under the influence of a walking pustule, you are, at some level, still responsible. We as a species, long ago, came down hard against the "I was just following orders" defense. We said, this will not stand. And we cannot allow it to stand. The first thing I tweeted about this was relatively restrained. I said, only if it is true, it is not a disgrace. If it is true, it is an attempt at a genocide. And then I logged off Twitter. And I stayed off until midnight. And then I checked in again. It had not blown over. It had spread. It had been reported on in ever more horrifying detail. It had been picked up by Pink News. It had been picked up by Vice. It had been picked up by an increasing number of news outlets further and further up the scale of the mainstream and respectable. It's an atrocity if it happened. The unfortunate thing is, if it is true, it cannot be prosecuted as a war crime because we're not at war with brown immigrants. But as I saw someone phrase it earlier this evening, if reports were coming out of any other country that some insane doctor was being reported to be harvesting the uteruses and the fallopian tubes and the ovaries of random incarcerated women for no medically valid and no realistically discernible purpose, we would have fucking invaded them by now. I've put this off as long as I could. I wanted to have sources. I wanted to have sources vetted. I wanted the BBC to have a report on it. News moves alarmingly slowly in a 24-hour news cycle, which, as far as I can tell, probably means that it's real and that the big heavy hitters of the news organizations are being very careful in covering their asses while reporting on a story so horrifying, so earth-shaking, so regime-ending, so devastating, so blindingly, shriekingly, human rights violatingly horrible. Other people in this community are going to cover this story. They're going to cover it in more depth, at more length, with less profanity, with more citations and better sourcing. But that's just not my brand. I rage and fume. I shake my fist at a non-existent God. The problem is here, I don't have a fictitious character to rage against. I have a real person. Because the camps were the brainchild of Stephen Miller. And everyone knows it. The tightening of the security at the camps was the brainchild of Stephen Miller. And everyone knows it. Stephen Miller owns, has the weight of upon his soul everything that has happened in those camps. The deaths, the assaults, the negligence, the absence of COVID testing, the lack of social distancing, the rapes. And apparently now we find out the medical experimentation. Stephen Miller, you're my age. What is wrong with you? If anyone knows this doctor at this one camp who's accused of doing this macabre sex-specific organ harvesting party, do not, under any circumstances whatsoever, dox him. That's a bad idea. Report him. Distance yourself from him. Quit your job at his practice. Whistleblow him. And if there's any truth whatsoever, however small, if there's a grain, a crumb, an iota of truth in these reports that are coming out of these camps, then send his ass to The Hague.